Thursday, Alice.
Is it?
It is indeed. It is indeed. On the radio show today, I did a Throwback Thursday to 1982, the last time inflation was this high, which were, whatever, since 1982, a year that I particularly loved, actually. The year I really fell in love, really head over heels with baseball. I used to record a lot of games and this and that. And it doesn't matter. So anyway, we had fun with it. And the administration's handling of the, I don't even forget it. I don't even care. I did talk to Sean Maloney today, who's the military guy who I had on from the Royal Imperial Military.
An important military thing.
Yes, he's an important military thing. Where is he? Sean, we got to get this right, Alice. I'm not going to half-ass it anymore. Sean Maloney, Military Canada. He is, I'm glad you asked him, Alice, because he is a professor of history at the Royal Military College.
This is the guy we heard on Quillette yesterday.
Exactly. So I poached their guest. He was fun to talk to today. I want to play a little bit of it because he got into the mindset of not only, how this
Oh, wow. Does this mean that the nameless company put up your podcast today?
Oh, yeah. They all went up today. Not only that, so he, but we talked about just like how the hell they found themselves in this situation. How are they sitting in this column, outside of Kyiv with trucks that are broken, tires that are flat, etc. And then we went into a little bit of the morale that's happening to the Russians as well. And he kind of he started to enjoy himself.
Oh, and it's like with any vehicle, if it sits there, it essentially deteriorates. So you got to move it around. If these things have been sitting in storage sites for years and they haven't been maintained properly, we're not surprised this is what's happening. So
it's just so. Doesn't somebody have to report the bad news to Putin? Isn't somebody going to hang for this?
Yeah, but you're dealing with a culture in a country where the lie is everything. Have you seen on Netflix there's a documentary called Icarus, which deals with the doping scandal? When you watch that, you realize just how corrupted and how much the whole thing is a lie. So the lower level commanders don't want to get in trouble, so they'll pop up and say, "Oh yeah, everything's fine," right? And that's what's going on. That's got to be what's going on.
It's got to be because these guys, and I don't know. You said it's the March column. I don't know if it's still vulnerable, but with Javelin missiles, etc., they can just pick off these. These guys are sitting ducks, aren't they?
Hopefully.
I just find it unbelievable that this is happening, and I realize that the Russians.
Do. Look, but I've been telling you. I was the historian for the Canadian Army's Cold War commitment at the end of the Cold War. I watched the Soviet, then the Russian army leave Eastern Germany, leaving its stuff behind. Okay, and we were up against a really formidable enemy during the Cold War. But that was the Red Army. This is not the Red Army. No matter what they say or what people think that it is, it's not attitudinally that. It's not ideologically that. The motivation of the conscripts is almost nil. It seems. A lot of vehicles are abandoned. People have dumped their body armor. They've legged it with their personal weapons. I'm getting anecdotal accounts of this. It's hard to tell how widespread it is from a handful of accounts. Okay. But I've got an account of a bunch of guys take their APC, they drive it into a marsh and burn it, and then they're walking home to Russia, and they got
an APC is an armored vehicle,
armored personnel carrier. Yeah. Okay, they thought.
So that you know how craven I am, I heard Jonathan Kay ask him that question.
Exact question.
So I knew the answer, but I applauded from the teacher. That's right. Armored personnel goes, see, I did good. It's like it was you for a second in high school.
They were like, we're out of here, baby. And they got scooped up with the Ukrainians. And then they explained what they had been up to. And things like that, right? Now, here's one for you. The Ukrainians used the term marauder. And originally I thought it was like just a negative term for the Russians. They actually called the Russians orcs from Lord of the Rings. But oh yeah, they talk about Orchistan and Orkograd, and so, but they were talking about marauders. And my wife says, "Hey, wait a minute, they're not using it in that context." I said, "Well, what is it?" She's like, "Oh, they're like armed deserters. They are still in packs and they're looting and raping and hiding from their commanders, but not fighting." So you probably a sizable number of the so-called casualties are the marauders who just aren't reporting in. Their commanders may be reporting them dead. Something like that. I can't tell for sure. I mean, I would never tell you what I'm with 100% certainty. This is what we're speculating, but given what's going on, it seems reasonable. Because the casualty numbers that are coming out are like off the scale, even though this is high intensity warfare. I mean, this isn't like Afghanistan or Iraq in the same way, right?
Right.
This is on another order of magnitude in terms of firepower and destruction. But the number of casualties they've taken, I got a source up in Belarus that probably has some relationship to the medical system, and they're processing 1,000 casualties a day.
Oh my goodness!
Think about that.
Wow,
right?
What a hornet's nest!
They've had to bring in pediatric surgeons from Russia because they've run out. And I understand pediatric surgeons can do certain things, and they've looked for every burn doctor in Russia to go in there. And that makes sense, given when you catastrophically detonate an armored vehicle and survive, you're burned, or eject from an aircraft. So they've activated big chunks of the Russian medical system that handle the casualties. And guys, I know it's gruesome and it sounds awful, and
guys, who's guys?
You and your listeners.
Maybe. Yeah, I think it's like because he's a professor. It's the class,
Yeah. But understanding, this is the only way we can understand what kind of damage is being done. And what the breaking point may or may not be.
Wow. We are talking to Dr. Sean Maloney.
So did you ask him, what will it take for Putin to back out? Like, is there any breaking point? Because obviously Russians are famous
last thing I'm about to ask, I think, is
for this.
to ask him to prognosticate. I think that happens. Mostly, I laughed uproariously every few seconds at what he said. Sean, any predictions?
No, I'm an historian. I usually record and look backwards and cogitate predictions. I can say this though: there's a number of us that we talk about this daily, repeatedly, and to us, the only way this ends is if Putin dies. Like, no matter it's almost like no matter what casualties they take, they're still going to keep doing something somewhere. Like, we haven't even gotten to the nuclear dimension of this up in the Arctic, where they're flying bombers around, or when they're activating and moving around their ballistic missiles, that kind of thing. I mean, that's been going on for 2 months. I've been watching it. There's a whole nuclear dimension to this thing as well, right? So,
and you had mentioned they could use a limited nuclear strike out of a cannon fire.
Yeah, it's a battlefield nuke in a low kiloton yield range. I mean, if they wanted to generate damage, you use the
That's
term
what I
shock
said.
and
Mini
awe.
nukes.
If they wanted to really put a shot across the bow, they could do that. They've got them. I saw them coming in by train.
Would that trigger Article 5 if they did that?
January. No, because Ukraine's not part of NATO, right?
Yeah, I just figured that because of nuclear fallout, maybe, but I guess not.
Yeah, if you airburst, you don't get a lot of fallout. You get a lot of shock and damage, right? I mean, people think Hiroshima and Nagasaki, you got nuclear weapons, you can tailor the output to do different things, right? So, but the problem here is that this is one of the reasons Putin exercised the strategic nuclear forces. It was a signaling for us to stay out of this. And it, you've seen the discussion over the MiGs from Poland and all that. Well, we are being deterred from direct intervention, even though we support what's going on in there. So there are these other things. And if there's this recent discussion in the past 48 hours of chemical weapons use.
Oof.
Okay, so. And then this whole false flag stuff about bioweapons and on and on and on and on and on. I mean, he's got a lot of tools in the tool chest he could pull out.
Wow. Hey, Sean Maloney, thank you so much. We got to go to the news here. Thank you for your time. You were fantastic. I appreciate it.
Yep, no problem. Take care.
Take care. There is. Here you go. Is an interesting Orchistan called the Orcs. That tells you, though. I mean, that tells you that social media. And the fact that every infantry person on both sides grew up with the internet the day they were born. And that's a new thing, I think. And so maybe one of the reasons why these Russians want no problem is that they were just playing Fortnite against some of these guys, 2 months ago. And they're like, why are we here? Why am I not playing Fortnite?
Right. I mean, Ukraine and Russia, even pre-internet, were always very closely linked culturally. Right. And, there are a lot of people there are a lot of people that we might even like consider to be Russian immigrants in the U.S. today who are probably more technically Ukrainian by the lines that we're drawing now. It's because this was part of the Soviet Union. It's sort of a weird blend, but more than that, I mean, it was part of the Russian Empire, right? So, and in some sense, the origin of the Russian Empire, Kievan Rus, right? Like
you say Kevin Rus?
Kievan, like Kiev, like what we think of as Imperial Russia in some ways, it originated in Kiev, whatever we're calling it.
You're smart.
Like Saint Princess Olga of Kiev.
Yeah, I know.
Who buried a bunch of her enemies alive after they killed her husband. So, so
do you like her, Alice?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I venerate her as a saint in my church, actually.
Do you really?
Yes, we do. Not for that. She converted to
but do you personally like
Christianity
that part of
later.
it?
I do a little bit.
Yeah, you do. Great. And because I'm a sick bastard, I like that you like it. All right. So that's what's going on over there. I did see this 6-minute long video today of Kharkiv, and which is the city which now apparently is pretty much abandoned, but they were showing Ukrainian troops hanging out. One of the guys, Ukrainian soldiers, said these guys fight like it's World War II, the Russians. He said they come in a front column, in just like behind tanks, etc. He said they fight like it's 1941. A young Ukrainian, and he says that they're running circles around them. The Ukrainians are running circles around them.
Probably some of their weaponry is from then too.
Yeah, well, and I'm also it showed there were dead Russian soldiers everywhere, and Chechnyan soldiers, and I mean, the Russians are not doing a good job of retrieving the bodies. I guess they don't send them home. That's why they had incinerator trucks or something.
Yes, I don't know.
Anyway, it's terrible. It's not good stuff. But they said that they're leaving the Russian soldiers in the streets for the dogs.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a rough time over there. Good time for the dogs. I mean, silver lining? No. Okay,
I don't know about that one.
But they also said it's funny because they also said that what they need are more planes. They need more planes and more javelins and everything like that. But they said, we need more planes. Send us more planes. Which is interesting that they said that.
But we're not doing.
Right. Because as we played yesterday, I think we played yesterday, right? Blinken, I thought I had this.
It was Kirby that said it.
Kirby. Let me see if there we go. Here's Kirby saying, nope, absolutely not. Don't need new planes.
The Ukrainian Air Force currently has several squadrons of fully mission-capable aircraft. We assess that adding aircraft to the Ukrainian inventory is not likely to significantly change the effectiveness of the Ukrainian Air Force relative to Russian capabilities.
But mostly.
That is a tricky worded thing. Yeah, but mostly it definitely will help them. It's not going to advantage them more compared to Russian capability. Wait a second. That's word trickery there. If they have more planes, more pilots can get in them and blow up Russians. So this is such BS that he's saying. But it's
also what they are saying they want.
Right.
So we're directly saying their assessment of the situation must be wrong.
No, it won't help you.
Yes,
it's helping us. I can
tell you. Please send them.
Therefore, we believe that the gain from transferring those MiG-29s is low. And finally,
I do not believe this line, POS. Nope. Who's the guy? Who's the Russian spokesperson?
Is it Lavrov?
Lavrov. I believe him. I believe him more than I believe John Kirby and anybody in this administration.
The intelligence community has assessed that the transfer of MiG-29s to Ukraine may be mistaken as escalatory and could result in a significant Russian reaction that might increase the prospects of a military escalation with NATO. Therefore, we also assess the transfer of the MiG-29s to Ukraine to be high risk.
Right.
That's the real reason. And, I mean, I'm not in favor of doing anything escalatory with Russia, frankly, either. But, we should be honest. It would help the Ukrainians. That's the reason that we're not doing it, because it would help them. And anything we do that helps them would be seen as escalatory by the Russians. So that sucks. But what we could have done to help the Ukrainians originally was have a harder line stance to Russia from the get-go and not cave to them and give them everything they ever wanted for the past year, as Biden did. But once... I don't know. It's like one of these things. Once you're at this point, it's hard to know what we can do to actually help.
Right.
But never fear.
First of all, our assessment was that it was going to be a rout. So what do we
Right.
know? What do we know? These guys, these Ukrainians, apparently know how to do some pretty awesome stuff. So why wouldn't you facilitate it more?
Well, right. I mean, facilitate it though. I mean, like, if we're going to do stuff that the Russians are going to take as like directly attacking them, then we've got a problem, you know? And I wonder if the reason is because maybe we can't provide just the planes on their own. Maybe we have to do like training and maintenance and other stuff. Like maybe they're not equipped to do that. So then we end up more in an advisor role within Ukraine, you know, and that's, I think, where we start to like get into the slippery slope of war
I think
with
that
Russia.
they're already... One of the things that has panned out for the Ukrainians is that almost everything is compatible. The tanks are compatible with their tanks. The shells are compatible with their shells. The guns are compatible with their guns. So they're seamlessly using Russian equipment that the Russians leave behind. I think that the Poles were going to give the Ukrainians old MiG-25s, which Ukrainians can fly. So what's the problem here? What we're supposed to do is backfill the Poles, and we're afraid to do that. This is being a scared of Putin thing at a time when they should be, I think, at this time.
I mean, yeah. So, but do you think we should do a no-fly zone?
No, God, no. But I think we should let the Poles do what they need to get the planes into Ukraine. And whether that's drive them in, whatever. Sean Maloney had talked about.
So then what happens when Putin attacks Poland and now we're in a war because of NATO?
Well, then Putin's got several fronts now to worry about, including Ukraine, which he's already being routed in, and he can explain, as the Ukrainians advertise the "Where's my son" 800 number that Russian mothers are calling now, which they are. Do you know about this?
But I believe that.
They've created a call center now for Russian mothers. Ukrainians are doing this so they can help them try to find their sons. It's brilliant. Not cyber warfare. What's it called?
Psychological warfare?
Yeah, psyops. It's brilliant. So I'd be fine. You want the Polish to give them stuff? Why not? If Putin will have to deal with the idea that the Ukrainians if he wants a full ground war, which means he loses in Ukraine, he loses in Poland, unless he nukes everything, in which case he loses Russia. Assuming the world still works like that, which I'm not sure it does anymore. But so...
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what any of these answers are.
There's two, but here's the problem. This story from Reuters, exclusive, Facebook temporarily allows posts on Ukraine war calling for violence against invading Russians or Putin's death. That ain't good.
No, of course not. I told you earlier, Facebook loosened the rules about talking about the Azov Battalion, the neo-Nazi group in Ukraine that is anti-Russian. So, like, it is interesting watching how like quickly the rules shift, right?
Well, right. But
when like we have a particular dog in a fight, right? It's like immediately all the social media misinformation rules. Very unfortunately, like I know a lot of conservatives who switched to DuckDuckGo as a search engine
Alice,
instead of Google.
this is freaking dangerous. Do you understand what's happening?
I understand.
Meta platform Facebook will allow Facebook and Instagram users in some countries to call for violence against Russians and Russian soldiers in the context of the Ukraine invasion, according to internal emails seen by Reuters on Thursday, and a temporary change to its hate speech policy. Temporary change. The social media company is also temporarily allowing some posts to call for the death of Russian President Vladimir Putin or Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko in countries including Russia, Ukraine, and Poland, according to internal emails to its current content moderators.
1941, Facebook temporarily allows calling to put Japanese American citizens in camps.
As a result of the Russian invasion in Ukraine, we have temporarily made allowances for forms of political expression that would normally violate our rules, like violent speech such as death to the Russian invaders. We still won't allow credible calls for violence against Russian civilians.
Oh, thank goodness. And we know that Facebook fact checkers are so careful and thorough.
Oh, yeah, we know some.
Like that.
The calls for leaders' deaths will be allowed unless they contain other targets or have two indicators of credibility, such as the location or method, one email said in a recent change to the company's rules The temporary policy changes on calls for violence to Russian soldiers apply to Armenia, Azerbaijan, Estonia, Georgia, Hungary, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Romania, Russia, Slovakia, and Ukraine, according to one email. In the email recently sent to moderators, Meta highlighted a change in its hate speech policy pertaining both to Russian soldiers and to Russians in the context of the invasions. We are issuing a spirit of the policy allowance to allow T1 violent speech that would otherwise be removed under the hate speech policy, targeting Russian soldiers, except prisoners of war. Oh, okay. Or targeting Russians where it's clear that the context is the Russian invasion of Ukraine. We are doing this because we have observed that in this specific context, Russian soldiers is being used as a proxy for the Russian military. The hate speech policy continues to prohibit attacks on Russians, the email says. Last week, Russia said it was banning Facebook in the country, yada, yada, yada. This is talk about the Defense Production Act. This is the overt weaponization of the social media, global social media giant, an American company.
Well, the left wants
based on the considerations of a bunch of Skittles eating, Pepsi Light drinking addicts in Stanford, California. This is insane that we're letting them be part of the war. This is like...
But that's all that the left knows how to do, right? They've eschewed actual war and actual diplomatic tools like sanctions and like real things that we can do. And they're all Twitter activism. They're all dragging Coca-Cola on Twitter because they won't pull out of Russia altogether. They're calling on the various groups to boycott. They treat Russia the exact same way as an entity, the same way they treat Ron DeSantis or Atlanta, Georgia for having bad election laws or whatever. It's all, they have only one playbook, and it's all the same playbook.
Yes, but Alice, this is... Facebook in some of these places is probably town meeting, school committee, the political structure, it's a center for discourse. This is very dangerous. This is a very dangerous and irresponsible thing to do.
Of course it is. Of course it is. It further, it further blurs the line between Facebook and reality, right?
Right. And it's got Facebook deciding to lesser a group of people based on nationality.
Right.
Pretty GD dangerous stuff.
Of course it is. Of course
so
it is.
when the Facebook community page of Tribunal decides what should happen to the Russians in the next town over, well, or, cutely coded, trials by Facebook for Russian prisoners, whatever. Mm-hmm. What the frig are they doing? The last 2 years, we decided, and in really the last 6 years, but certainly the last 2 years, we decided that extraordinary events called for extraordinary measures, at which the law and principles could all be suspended like that. Mm-hmm. And now we've got so good at it for the last 2 years that we've now used the template now in a war that most Americans know bleep about. Nothing about.
Right. And it's spread everywhere. And it's especially problematic because, people say like, well, they're a private company, dun, dun, dun. First of all, these are monopolies. Like, there's really no substitute for Facebook. And there's really no substitute for Google. But the ones that do start to kind of exist, like, for example, a lot of people have been using DuckDuckGo instead of Google because they have, like, better privacy policies. They don't, like, sell all your information to show you ads, right? But DuckDuckGo announced that they're going to be censoring Russian disinformation on their search engine as well as Google. So, like, one of the top competitors to Google is doing the exact exact same. So like when they're all working in a coordinated fashion, and we saw the Biden administration do this during COVID, they were directly putting pressure on the social media companies, telling them to censor people, telling them to censor disinformation. I mean, clearly they're doing this in line with stated U.S. foreign policy. They're seeing the same things where Psaki's coming out and saying, John Kirby's coming out and, is it John Kirby? Is that his name? The same thing, like, this is Russian disinformation. Anything about these biolabs is Russian disinformation. And they're going, okay, we're going to censor the disinformation now. And it's like, yes, technically speaking, it's not the government censoring anything, but when all the major providers of a service are taking their cues directly from the government to say who should not be allowed to put information out there on the internet that people can find, you're really walking a very fine line between government censorship and private censorship, right? I would say that's really government censorship. It's like the government puts the talking points out there and all the private companies take them because they're so afraid of being regulated as monopolies, which they are and should be, right? So the whole social media thing is super, super dangerous, right? But, it's one of the things that like makes me question if the whole it makes me question the whole like timing of the whole Ukraine thing and how it's like this weird mass hysteria and coming right after COVID and all this stuff. And like coincidentally, everything about it aligns perfectly with the left's other priorities, right? Mm-hmm. Like coincidentally, it also means that gas prices are going to go up, which means that not their fault, you understand, but it's a perfect time to get an electric vehicle.
Right. It's also hashtag Putin spike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what it is. Then it's a Putin inflation as well.
The price hike is the Putin price hike. So yeah, we got the inflation numbers today, 7.9% annualized inflation in February, which is awesome. And not only that, not annualized inflation, but year-over-year inflation.
I don't know what either means.
I think the annualized rate of the February month-over-month inflation is like, it's going to end up being like 8+%. But in any case, inflation's high. It's the highest it's been since 1982, as you were pointing out on your show today. And that's February inflation. Putin didn't invade Ukraine until March. So this is only getting worse from there. This hasn't taken into account any of the Putin price hike yet. That's all coming into the inflation numbers next month, which is, this is a bad problem. And the left's only prescription to deal with it is should have bought a Tesla. And now the LA Times editorial board, which you would think would be like sort of a prestigious group, is calling for the US to use the Defense Production Act to make ductless mini split heat pumps to put on your house so that we can be more fuel efficient. Now, forget the fact that those don't work if you live in New England. You still need to be on like gas or oil as your backup anyway. If you live in a climate where it actually gets like seriously cold, they're not enough to combat New England winter. But anyway, the idea that, first of all, I don't think most average people had heard of the Defense Production Act before COVID, and we used it to like make PPE or whatever.
Right.
The fact that now we've like broken down that barrier and now people are just like, let's just use the Defense Production Act for anything. War halfway across the planet, let's use the Defense Production Act. Like, we're not at war with anyone right now,
Right. Well, that's a very good point here, but it isn't,
because the Defense Production Act is supposed to be like when you're in World War II and the government needs to like commandeer private resources for the war effort.
Of course, yeah. Ford needs to make tanks, in other words. Right.
Yeah. COVID was a stretch, but like I get it. But
right, and they didn't really. It's the threat of it that got these companies to say, "Okay, we'll start making masks to shut these guys off."
But the idea that now, like anytime, like now that this idea has been suggested, it's out there in the universe, and people are going to keep saying we should do this after this for other things. Like, why not? Like, even if the war between Russia and the Ukraine stops, like, we still need to combat climate change. That's a war for our very survival and for the very planet itself. Like, why wouldn't we use the Defense Production Act to mass produce ductless mini splits for everybody? Like, I mean, it's insane, but it's possible. Why not use the Defense Production Act to make stuff for people of color, since racism is a huge public health threat, as huge as COVID?
Let me draw a corollary there, Alice. Considering when you talk about racism, you talk about systems, right? And stakeholders, etc.
Right.
What happens when the FDA or the CDC tells private property owners that they can't evict people? It seems to me that means that essentially their
they
private
own your
property.
House.
Yes, they own your house. You are the custodian of the house, but really the government owns your house if you don't have freedom to do with it what you will.
Right.
So what happens then when the government gets to dictate what the means of production can do at any given time?
Yeah.
I hate to be a jerk, but
I think that's called something.
Right. Why are we fighting Putin here when he's he's the future? I mean, this is communist. This is craziness, and the idea that I'm not surprised because we suck now. We're at the worst ever. James just said the other day, I think that he took it from our podcast, but he said, "Can't Putin just nuke us already?" It's like, you know what? I don't want Putin to nuke us, but if somebody wanted to nuke us, now's the time. We suck. We do. Really?
I mean, I guess we do.
Okay, should we get to death sentence?
Well,
you want to say
let's do something happier first while we're talking gas and gas prices. Which is, have you spent any time in New Jersey ever?
Really only drove through. Kind of with you.
Yeah, yeah, mostly driving through it.
Yep.
The state is mostly highway, is my impression.
That's the joke, is that I come from New Jersey. Yes, what exit? Get it?
Yeah. We did, I think, stay in a hotel there one time, not through...
Which was fun, actually. It was lovely. It's actually
out in the
kind
burbs
it's
somewhere.
actually kind of a pretty state.
Yeah. So, yeah, but one of the interesting things about the highways in New Jersey is... New Jersey is one of the only, or perhaps the only state left where it's illegal to pump your own gas.
Oh my God, I can't believe I didn't talk about this today.
So, in Massachusetts for a long time, we had you can't leave the gas pump. Like, you weren't allowed to have the little clip that lets you set it up to go on its own. That was not allowed. And that was like a big deal. Finally, now we're allowed to set the pump to just go and go squeegee your windshield or whatever. But, anyway, New Jersey, you're not allowed to pump your own gas at all. It's not allowed. All the gas stations are full service. This is obviously something that the gas station lobbying community has worked towards. I don't know that, but I guess people in New Jersey are used to it because there's an impression that you can't just let private citizens just pump their own gas. You need the experts who work at the gas station to do things like that for you. Anyway, so lawmakers have introduced a bill to allow gas stations to have self-serve gasoline. And there's been some new polling that's out now about this. And 73% of the residents of New Jersey would like to keep it that they're not allowed to pump their own gas. 22% said they want it to change, and 5% weren't sure if they want it changed or not.
That is effing perfect. That's perfect. Wave motion gun, aliens, Argo, let her rip right now. Just destroy us.
So, I mean, I can understand, wanting there to be full service, so that you can get it if you want, but
we need to have somebody do this. We're not sure. We're just not comfortable. Holy God.
But that's a high number. I wouldn't have expected it to be 73% of the people. And I remember there was a story like this a few years ago in another state that had this. I think maybe it was Oregon. Is that the state, the other state? I forget if they did it or not. But anyway, I remember reading a story about it. And all the comments on the local news story from people in Oregon were this is just the companies trying to cut costs and making us do it ourselves. And evil corporations. They were sure that somehow it was profiting the companies to take away their full service gas from them. And they're but if I do it, I could spill gas. My hand might smell like gas if I pump the gas.
What if I'm smoking?
I know. I can't. So,
it's like you can imagine one of those infomercials with like, oh God, with the spray
when you're in
going
black
everywhere.
and white.
Oh, what? Come on.
So
This is untenable.
So yeah, good luck, New Jersey. It's gonna, I guess, probably stay like that now. Then, so you're still gonna have to get full service gas in New Jersey. The other thing I don't like about
I pick the ones I like.
the biggest thing I don't like about full service gas is I don't like having to hand my credit or debit card to somebody and have them like walk off with it and then come back. Like, because I don't trust
Can
people.
I play Donald Trump on this podcast where he talks about YMCA?
Sure.
But I love great music.
So do you actually spin, or
no, I don't spin,
what do you
but
use?
I pick the ones I like. I don't want to spin. I want to pick the ones I like.
What's your like go-to banger on the
Well,
aux?
I have a lot of them. You know a song that does get people moving, though? You know, I'll play beautiful, I love Broadway stuff and, you know, Phantom of the Opera and Les Mis, etc. You know what gets them rocking? YMCA.
YMCA is a track. It's an underrated track.
Do you know, is it an underrated?
I think so.
Well, it gets a lot of views, I can say, but YMCA, the gay national anthem, did you ever hear that? They call it the gay national anthem. But YMCA gets people up and it gets them moving. Mm-hmm. But we have a lot of good selections and people love it when I do it.
What's the best song to like transition to, like YMCA to what?
Maybe
Mo Bamba?
Maybe Hold On, I'm Coming.
Okay. So 2 a.m., you go to YMCA to Hold On, We're Coming, and that just gets the crowd going?
Well, you know, we just have a good time. But I love great music.
So,
well, there you go. You know what?
Trump should just keep doing this now forever. Don't bother with the presidency thing. Have somebody else do that who's like more interested in the nuts and bolts of that stuff. And Trump should just continue to like do interviews and like, you know, talk about DJing
for the first time
and random things because he has a platform now. Like I never would have tuned into Donald Trump talking on a podcast before he was president. Would you?
No, but there's something also about, first of all, Joe Biden is making Trump great again.
Of course.
Second of all,
that's always been the thing is that Donald Trump and the Democratic Party, in particular Biden and the media, have been in a competition to see who can make me like them the least at any given time. So, like every time I'm like, oh, I can't deal with Trump anymore. Please go away. The left acts so outrageous that I have to like Trump again. It's impossible. It's a vicious cycle that I can't break out of.
And, you know, there's something about like just the way he answered that. Mm-hmm. That it's unlike anything anybody else would say. And it's familiar. And I think, you know, it's almost, he sounded like a Trump takeoff, like a comedian. And I think that, like, he's kind of in that's kind of charming. Mm-hmm. That he's not embarrassed that he likes to pick the songs. Doesn't play them, he picks them.
Yeah.
And he's into it.
Yeah. And they're, like, corny songs. And he's not, like, Trump is, like, one of the least self-conscious people I've ever, like, he's not worried about seeming cool. He's not, he just, like, does his thing. He looks how he want to look. He says the stuff he wants to say. Like, he's just so unconcerned with how he's perceived by other people. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He just acts like how he wants to act. He likes the song YMCA. No one would pick that. If you were, like, a politician and somebody asked you, like, for your playlist.
Okay.
You wouldn't have that be one of the ones you'd pick to make people think you were cool.
Not really, and if I did, I wouldn't say it's the gay national anthem. Oh my God, that's so, like, incredibly, like, could be considered offensive in so many ways. Like, gays have the American national anthem. But the fact that he says that tells you that he doesn't see a difference in people. Mm-hmm. He doesn't. Where's my African American? He says into the crowd. Like, Jews are really good bargainers, he says to a crowd. Like, how do you can't say any of this stuff. I mean, it's but the fact that he does, and that he's untethered to any type of political correctness or wokeism is such an important, huge thing. And you and I counted him out after January 6th. He effed up and whatever. And that last year was not good, and Twitter was not good. But where he's coming from, loves the country, wants America to win, likes stuff big, beautiful, and tacky and whatever. And in this sentiment, this has me almost thinking, okay, I'll give it another shot.
Let me ask you, do you think that General Patton was woke? I don't think so. What do you think, Mike? Mike, was he woke? I don't think so. I don't think he was too woke. He was the exact opposite. You know what woke means? It means you're a loser. Everything woke. Everything woke. It's true. Everything woke turns to shit, okay? It's true. It's true. Look at what's happening.
I mean, what do you do but just...
Where's the lie?
Right. What do you do but, like, salute that? He's absolutely right. And it's like, man, and we'll get to death sentence right now because he's the guy I really want to see run, but I hate to tell you, Alice, and I like you, and we're friends. Trump may be growing on me.
No, you can't. We can't do that. We can't do that again. I can't do that again. It's a lot of stress on the
We're not
system
gonna get a yard
just from
sign.
our liberal friends freaking out all the time. It's like a lot to go through.
Okay, this is DeSantis.
So Disney has now, they've been bullied online because obviously Disney is a big industry in Florida. It's a big company that's in Florida. They have some pull over the Florida government. So everybody's screamed and yelled and kicked Disney on social media until the Disney CEO has now agreed to meet with Ron DeSantis to talk to him about the don't groom little kids bill.
Right. Which the left calls the don't say gay law, which
tells you can't talk about sexual identity and gender identity with kids until they're in fourth grade. Which seems like an oddly like bare minimum bill, but that's fine. And you would think like Disney as a company that creates content for children would be on board. I mean, like, after all, there's not a lot of gender and sexuality content on Disney Plus. I can tell you that because they know their market and they're just doing their thing, right?
Right.
But that being said, Disney's been feeling the pressure. The CEO is going to meet with DeSantis to talk to him about the bill. Nothing's going to happen. Disney's not going to leave Florida. But whatever. They're trying to make some motions to seem like they're trying to stop this terrible, horrible bill that's not going to allow psychotic teachers to groom your children.
Right. Okay, and this is DeSantis today at just one of his daily national addresses.
And I also think that if you have companies like a Disney that are going to say and criticize parents' rights, they're going to criticize the fact that we don't want transgenderism in kindergarten and first grade classrooms, if that's the hill that they're going to die on, then how do they possibly explain lining their pockets with their relationship from the Communist Party of China? Because that's what they do.
And that's true. The new live-action Mulan movie was filmed in the same place where they have the Uyghur concentration camps. So, and they had to like work with China and thank them and the
right. The Uyghurs had to stay inside during the filming.
so the whole thing's a mess. But he's absolutely right. These companies don't care about what's right and wrong. They care about where the money is. So if they hear a loud enough mess on social media, they'll make some motions, but they're not going to leave Florida. They're not going to stop working with China. They don't care about this stuff. But, there you go. Just Ron DeSantis being right again and the left not being able to deal with it. which is why I hope he'll be the Republican nominee and not Trump.
I know, I'm there with you, but it's just...
Do we need to do a Kamala check-in? I know you probably did that on your show, but speaking of who Trump or Ron DeSantis could potentially be running against.
This is her at a bilateral press conference, standing next to the president of Poland, when a reporter asks her and then him a question, and this is how it went.
I wanted to ask you about some reporting that my colleague here in Poland noticed. He recently spoke with the mayor of the largest border town, who told him that the refugee system is essentially not set up for this, that it will collapse. It's an improvised system that can work for maybe 2 weeks, but not indefinitely. And I'm wondering what the United States is going to do more specifically to set up a permanent infrastructure. And relatedly, is the United States willing to make a specific allocation for Ukrainian refugees? And for President Duda, I wanted to know if you think, and if you asked the United States to specifically accept more refugees.
Okay.
She's got a question she's supposed to be answering. She doesn't get it. She doesn't know what to do.
She certainly doesn't have an answer to the question ready, because that's uncalled for.
A friend in need is a friend indeed.
I can first.
So is that her implying that the president of Poland is leaving her hanging somehow?
I don't know. All I know is that she's laughing at a refugee question at a time of war. I mean, you didn't see FDR do that a lot, or Churchill a lot, during these addresses.
Time. Szanowna pani redaktor,
Madam, the situation is very...
And he's answering the question. So there you go. The other one I have is... Do we even bother?
Go for it.
Kamala once again decides to wing it.
The UN has set up a process by which there will be a review and investigations, and we will, of course, participate as appropriate and necessary. But we all watched the television coverage of just yesterday. That's on top of everything else that we know and don't know yet, based on what we've just been able to see. And because we've seen it or not doesn't mean it hasn't happened.
Holy God. Where are we?
What?
Where are we now?
What does that even mean?
I don't know. We're floating in space now and just went down a magical Milky Way slide. And...
When you randomly pause at random points in your sentences,
you can see the pinwheel, the Macintosh pinwheel going. Like, okay.
Your content more weighty.
Buffering.
But just limited to what we have seen. Pregnant women going for health care, being injured by...
She even watches TV half-assed. Like, just watch a show. We know you're not going to read the pile of stuff over there we have for you. Please just watch a show. Was it women going for health care? That's one thing.
Really? And I don't say this lightly. The women on The View are more informed than Kamala about what's going on.
Yes.
I don't know, missile, a bomb?
I don't know.
In an unprovoked, unjustified war? Where a powerful country is trying to take over?
Oh, God.
Another country violate its sovereignty, its territorial integrity, for the sake of what? Nothing that is justified or provoked?
The translator must be like, I must be not as good as at this as I thought, because I can't make sense of any. This doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
Why does every clause of every sentence have a question mark at the end of it,
to put the onus back on you. That's what it is. Stop listening to what I'm saying. Contemplate my questions.
So when she was on the podcast the other day and they asked her to explain the Ukraine conflict in layman's terms, and she said Ukraine's a little country and Russia's a big country near it and it invaded it, you thought that was just for the benefit of the podcast host and the audience, that she thinks they're dumb, that she like dumbed it way down for them. But that's actually just her whole understanding of the whole situation.
It's almost as if like at times she's actually, that's why the inflection is that she's asking us.
She really wants to know what's going on.
It's women and they were getting their health care, right? Yeah.
And I don't know, bombs, missile, I don't know. I mean, we're seeing it on the TV.
Absolutely, there should be an investigation. And we should all be watching. And I have no question the eyes of the world are on this war and what Russia has done in terms of this aggression and these atrocities. I have no doubt.
There should be an investigation?
And I'll watch it. I'll watch it. As Vice President of the United States, there should definitely be an investigation. And I'm going to watch. I'm going to keep watching what's going on. Maybe I'll learn something. Says
an investigation. There's war. Hitler is in the Sudetenland. You know what? There should be an investigation. You don't really have to investigate. Their army is now in their country. Women in the healthcare, they're just trying to get... That's her trying to be clever, to try to tie in, like, women's issues.
I'm surprised there wasn't, like, Black, Indigenous, and people of color and LGBTQ2SIA+.
The problem is you don't go to root causes when both sides are white. You know, that does no good.
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for listening. Hopefully you could make it through that painful Kamala part there. I don't know if you're still here, but if you are, you can find us on Twitter. That's at Burn Barrel Pod. We're also at Facebook.com/Burn Barrel Podcast, BurnBarrelPodcast.com. You can email us, BurnBarrelPodcast@gmail.com. Or what else can you do? You can go on YouTube, Rumble, and all the other places you like to listen to podcasts.
C'est la vie.